I've been wanting to talk about this for a fucking minute.
Oh yeah, I think I know what's coming.
I know you know it's coming.
I know you love to talk to me about this.
Yes, I do. And this is I know we talk a little bit heavy, but to bring this all back, talk about something a little bit positive, maybe a little heavy, still pisses me off when I think about it. But
yeah, me too.
Game of fucking Thrones.
Game
bro.
of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Me and you are such
biggest
big.
letdown.
I think, dude. Me and you are such big artists. Like, we do a lot of artistic things. We do a lot of film and all those kinds of things. And so we really have an eye for these things. And now definitely what you're talking about, which we can talk about, is your story writing in these things. So now you can actually, thinking about storytelling and story writing and characters and things like that, and now comparing it to like Game of Thrones, it's like, holy fucking shit, what did they do with all this?
Yeah, so I'm not like a big blockbuster guy. I think you know that. Like,
right. Yeah.
If I choose to watch something, I'm not gonna like jump to like Star Wars. It's not gonna be like my go-to. I appreciate it for what it is, but it's not really my go-to. But there are TV shows that I find extremely compelling because the storytelling is so good.
Right, exactly.
Game of Thrones, seasons 1 through 5 being one of those. And then, like Breaking Bad or True Detective.
Breaking Bad was really
good. The
good.
Sopranos, things like that. Those, I almost appreciate TV shows like that more than I do, depending on the film. I mean, apples and oranges here. But yeah, Game of Thrones. All right, we won't drift too far off subject. So what's up with it?
Okay, so
I haven't watched it for like over a year.
I know it's been a minute. It's been a minute, but like especially thinking artistically and thinking about, why. This is one of my questions. Because when we are talking about movies, there's a director. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a person that directs an entire film, and they produce this beautiful piece beginning to end, and they give it on. But then it gets a little bit more complicated, especially in movies when you have like Star Wars, but each episode is directed by a different person, which means that, a director's job is to basically overlook everything, from the sound effects, music, down to what's shot, composition, everything.
Yeah.
And so when you take...
That'd be hard to do.
Yeah, and when you take two different directors, though, that's two different visions. Mm-hmm. And so it gets a little bit weird. So I think the weirdest part when we're talking about Game of Thrones, and isn't it just really weird when they have so many different directors with all these same characters, because they have different visions, and so they do it different. Because I think what everyone can really go all the way all the way down to, sizzle all the way down to, is you have those two directors. I forgot their names.
David Wise and Dan Benioff.
Yes,
I might have mixed that up. Is it Dan Wise and David Benioff? I think it's Dan Wise and David.
Yeah,
Benioff.
I'm pretty sure it is. And those two directors are the ones that handled the last season. And so
so just those two directed the entire last season. Because I know they've had a lot of different directors.
They've had a lot. Series. So that's regardless of that or not. Don't you think like you should have the same director throughout an entire series or movie?
I don't necessarily agree with that. Because Breaking Bad had like a list of A-list directors that worked on that, and that's one that I would I have a hard time pointing out a lot of flaws in the and where my big thing is the writing, the storytelling. How compelling is the storytelling? Like how much emotion can it bring out of a person? And I think that's what is important about storytelling. Like there's a lot of stuff that we watch that's just kind of like, that's why I'm not a big fan of like sitcoms and things like that. And I don't really choose to watch stuff like that because it's just kind of mindless watching.
Right.
And I mean, depending on the situation or whatever, but yeah, with things like Game of Thrones, as far as like the directing goes. So I'll say this, the last season, I didn't like it.
Exactly.
There were a few parts and everything. The writing is what I didn't like.
Okay.
I think they just, in my opinion, they botched a lot of storylines. They ended characters on a note that wasn't satisfying. Yeah, so it felt very rushed.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because my point with the directors is just like saying it's hard when it's hard when you have a vision and you just give the vision to so many people. And I think that I could be totally wrong, because what if they gave it to a different group of directors that outdid every other director and ended the season strong? Then I'm like, oh fuck yeah. But like, what do you think went wrong with the last season?
So I wouldn't I'm not the type of person that's going to put the blame on everyone or do this stupid shit where they try to get like a petition to rewrite the season or anything, or like anything like that. I'm not that bummed about it. It's like, yo, like, what do you actually think is going to happen? Like, you're not having a satisfying ending to one of your favorite TV shows is really going to bum you out that much. Like, you have nothing better to do,
Yeah,
so
facts,
like,
literally.
I was bummed because I did like that story and I felt like it was just, I think that the biggest problem is it was just rushed. I feel like with that, a story that vast with so many moving parts has to end at some point. And I mean, I think that as a whole, like everyone who worked on that did a great job. I mean,
Phenomenal.
I couldn't do a better job. The last season, and I always say this, the acting in the last season was awesome.
Fucking amazing.
It was great.
Top
acting.
level.
Yeah, great acting. I mean, I had nothing bad to say about that. And, you know, I used to be more critical about this kind of shit, you know, but I think I just didn't understand how much time and effort and money is put into these projects.
So you'd say probably the storytelling, which would make sense.
Yeah, it was the writing. It was just the writing. I mean, and it's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't know how specific I can get, but I just name a few examples. I felt like the Danny and John relationship was rushed. And a good example of how to build like two characters into a relationship, I think, is Ygritte and John. Remember when he was captured by the wildlings when he went beyond the wall for the first time?
And she didn't like him.
You had like a whole season where these two are like building a relationship together, and you know, you see a lot of their dynamics back and forth. You didn't see that with John and Danny. It was just kind of like, oh, they meet for the first time, have a few episodes, debate on how they want to defeat Cersei and the White Walkers, and then all of a sudden it's like, you're my aunt.
Yeah,
my auntie.
Literally, dude.
Give me a kiss, auntie.
God.
Let me ride your dragon, auntie.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so I felt like that was a little rushed. And so that last scene, you know, like I don't think it was the last scene, but when he ultimately killed her, it wasn't as emotionally as impactful because I just didn't feel like that relationship was,
right.
You know.
Because we're talking about the same thing when
Ygritte died, I think I cried.
I cried too, because when Ygritte did it, there's, like you said, there's so many of those dynamics with like the little boy, and that little boy's, they're kind of training him, and then he finally does this ultimate bad thing to kind of follow the wrong side.
Exactly.
And so when he shoots that arrow and kills her, like John's like looking at him and like, how could you fucking do this? And then he like wakes up like we were literally going down the fucking wrong path, whatever. But that dynamic, you're right, because the storytelling when it was him, and it's like, oh, like, that sucks because like we really care for Daenerys, but you can't really feel for John because like their relationship between the two had nothing. But when you see John's face with Ygritte, it was like, holy shit, this fucking hurts.
You had grown to love those characters together. You know, like you as a viewer, you had grown to love those two characters for who they were. And knowing that they kind of ended on a bad note and then ultimately one of them died was like gripping, you know? Where with John and Danny, I felt like you loved those two characters, but there wasn't enough build-up in that relationship to love those two characters together. In fact, especially when Danny turned heel. When Danny turned heel, then you were just annoyed with her anyway. You know, and then they didn't build on the relationship after she turned heel. You know, so, and she didn't necessarily turn heel on John immediately, but you could start to see her kind of going crazy. They didn't spend enough time doing that. In fact, actually, they kind of did. They did a lot of foreshadowing to, like, kind of foreshadow that she was going to turn to be a bad guy.
I think that was just edited wrong. Like, I saw this clip on Facebook where it showed Danny, like, when she was, like, crying, about to make the decision to burn all of King's Landing, and she was just standing there.
That was great. Well, that was a great scene.
Yeah, that was a great scene. But like when she was like making that decision, I saw this thing where it was like when it showed her face and the camera was like zooming on her face and she was like crying, that this someone that re-edited it kind of showed like old scenes of like everything she was thinking about.
Yeah, totally.
Because we didn't see what she was thinking about. So when you just saw like, holy fuck, but then the scene showed her like when she was getting beat by her brother and getting raped by Khal Drogo and like all these things that were just going on and on and on, and you're just like, and it shows you all those scenes, and then she like snaps. And then she goes off and does it.
And that's why that was a good scene.
Would make sense.
And they really emphasized her hunger for power throughout the entire series.
They
she
did.
was always very hungry for power.
There was hints.
Yeah, so like I had always kind of guessed that would happen. I knew that like one of the main characters was going to turn on the other one, and that would maybe be like the final villain. And it was always I was always kind of on this. I mean, it's been almost like a year or 2 years since it ended, right?
I think about a year,
Yeah, it's been a while. And so, yeah, I had always kind of suspected that it would be Danny, you know, because I knew it was going to come down with like Danny and John and Tyrion being like the last three characters.
Yeah, and I like you said, I love that. Like like I said, if they edited a little bit better and showed that like last little break and then why she did it, would it helped? But I think that whole like thing ended up. But like what about Arya though?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked because I wanted to get into that one next. There were two things that bugged me about Arya's storyline. The first one was the fact that she killed the Night King was a big disappointment for me, and I'll tell you why. Because her storyline didn't really align with the White Walkers. Now, granted, she's a Stark from Winterfell and all this stuff, but and that some of the battle sequences with her in that battle were really sick,
fucking
and
amazing,
I really liked.
yeah.
But the fact that she killed the Night King, I kind of felt was like a cheap way to just promote one of the story's favorite characters.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
True.
In my opinion,
she didn't spend the last 3 seasons caring about the White Walkers, and
she like was built up as to be this faceless assassin, which she did. I don't even think she did that once in the last season.
No, she didn't do that at all.
Yeah, at all. And then it was like she kind of became like the heroine of the story after Dany turned heel. Like Arya was like the new heroine. It's like, oh, she killed the Night King. Now she gets to kill Cersei. You know, and like it's just like why is Arya the one to kill everyone? You know, I think they could have done more with that. And I'm eager to see what they'll do with her in the books.
That's what I'm excited about because I feel like I think they'll take a lesson. It's just really weird that one of the biggest studios and most liked game shows in ever can end up like that. Like the last scene where nobody was like. And did you watch the documentary, by the way?
I think so. I think
the HBO documentary. But what I loved is when they did the table reading, it showed like some of the characters like reading, and they were like. They didn't like the script off the reading, you know.
Right. Oh, I did see that.
Yeah.
Varys, I think Varys
did it. He like
really
threw
mad.
his script. He's just like because he died in the most shitty fucking way.
He did. Yeah, and that was another character that they didn't give enough backstory to in the end. You know, like he was such a great character.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he was a great character, and he got a cheap death. R.I.P. Varys.
Yeah. So that was just like one of the first, like, I don't even know why they showed that in the HBO documentary. I'm like, dude, this is kind of like shitting on you guys even more, but whatever. Yeah. But like, since they did release that footage and it shows them like upset about it, it's just like, man, like your actors are like not liking, you know what I'm saying? And I understand. Like I said, the Daenerys thing, of course, like us, we don't want that to happen. But as a good story, it needs to happen where she flips and does that stuff.
Right, totally.
But where you shit on where Arya spent so much time becoming that faceless assassin.
And then they just didn't do anything.
And they didn't do nothing.
And that's why it was kind of rushed. And there were a lot of characters, I feel like, that happened to. Bran was one of them.
Yeah, Bran.
Arya.
Yeah, Bran's king and didn't do nothing.
And you know there were storylines that were satisfying. I mean, Jon's story was satisfying.
It was.
You know. Man, I don't know. It's been a while.
And
I kind of forget what happens. I haven't watched like the entire series for a while. So.
Right. I know it's been a minute. I just kind of want to touch on it, kind of beat a dead horse. We would nerd
a
little bit.
Yeah, we would nerd out about it.
Yeah.
So, no, it's a good one.
But like, you know, like Grey Worm, his sole purpose is to protect Dany.
Right.
Sole fucking purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been like, when Dany's like, kill everybody, he's like, kills everybody, right? Does anything Dany would do. Dany gets fucking killed. We have to send Jon to the north. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
Like, why would he not fucking literally kill him? Why would we not have that awesome battle sequence between Grey Worm and, oh my God, Jon Snow?
Yeah. Yeah, man, like you said, you know, I think it just goes back to it being rushed, and I think there were a lot of reasons why that happened, because I know that D&D is what they're referred to.
D&D, yeah.
I think they got pulled on to do a lot of the Star Wars stuff.
They were pulling, but then they got cut off.
Disney was probably paying them a lot more money than HBO, you know? So, yeah, ultimately I was really disappointed about that ending of that series, man. And then one of the characters that I thought that came full circle was Theon.
Theon was a fucking... Yeah. That's probably the best character that did have that full...
He had a full circle, came back and ultimately like sacrificed himself when he kind of like pulled kind of a Professor Snape.
He did, exactly.
Kind of a Professor Snape outcome there, so... but yeah, man, I want to go back through and rewatch that series at some point in time. I'm gonna give it a couple years so I forget what happened.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah, I know we're being a dead horse. I just know it's like one of those things.
No, you're fine, man. It's fun to talk about. I love to nerd out about the shit, and I haven't for a while. So.
Yeah. Game of Thrones. It's it's just one of those things. It was one of the best TV. Like being a filmmaker, like the writing and the cinematography and all those things, like
it's
I fucking studied it, just watched over and over and over again because it's so fucking phenomenal. But being a filmmaker, seeing the story writing and the cinematography and the actors and the set design and all those fucking things really tied in together, and it's like one of those things. It's like one of the best fucking series I've ever seen, and I just like to study it.
Yeah, the writing is
amazing, and so it's like I love it, and then it's like. It's just one of those things that it's one of the greatest pieces ever. But when you think about that last season, it's like that moment when you're like, "What's the best series I need to watch?" You're like, I don't know. Like, should I recommend you to watch this amazing fucking series? But then they shit on it at the end, and it's like, is it worth watching?
Yeah. In fact, somebody asked me that the other day. I was hanging out with some friends, and somebody had mentioned Game of Thrones, and then mentioned that the ending sucked. And somebody else was like, "I've never watched it." And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. If you don't want to be disappointed, maybe don't watch it. But
if you want to see...
The first 5 seasons, if you were to just watch the first 5 seasons and not watch the ending, it's really good, man.
It's fucking like, I
mean, that
amazing.
was groundbreaking. I mean, regardless of how it ended, that series was groundbreaking.
It really
see a
was.
lot of cool storytelling. George R.R. Martin we have to credit him.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant.
Totally.